Welcome back, Spencer. It's good to be talking. I know it's been probably a few weeks since we actually posted. Been a few weeks since we've been out, but today we want to talk about the Meta layoffs. What's going on, right? I mean, I have a Meta Quest, right? Like, are they even going to continue to support this hardware? I mean, for
Why
context,
don't you fill me in on what's been happening? I've been a little bit out of the loop.
Yeah, you're great. So I guess a couple things. Number one, they just fired off. I think this is the core piece. They just fired off 1,500 people from their VR division. I think specifically it's called Reality Labs. So they just fired off 1,500 people. So that's huge. On top of that, if I remember right, so in my notes, not only that, they're shutting down the metaverse for business. So there was this huge surge. I mean, billions. Yeah, it was. It's supposed to be this big thing, right? It's supposed to be like the future place where you do business.
Okay.
So I mean, it was janky as all hell, but that was. Do you remember those old videos of like half the avatar and they're like in meetings and
yeah, like the old Xbox looking avatar that.
Oh yeah,
they're like. I saw a picture of it. I think I saw it on X the other day that like Meta spent, I don't know, like 600 billion or something or 400 billion on this. And it was a picture of all those little me avatars like sitting on some digital conference table and the actual screen in the same virtual environment. I was like, what's the point of all this? That's a lot of money to spend on that.
I think the money actually spent on VR in total is probably 76 billion, give or take. So I think that's that'd be crazy.
A little bit overblown. Yeah.
It'd be a little bit overblown. If the company itself is only worth maybe a few trillion, to be blowing that kind of, you know what I mean? So like that's worth versus
exaggeration.
Versus, yes. That's not to say I get the exaggeration, totally get it. But like, I would probably say maybe 50 to 100 billion is probably what they spent. I would assume because they dumped so much money into this. And because I mean, they changed their name. They changed the name of the company to Meta. Like this was the future. So I think it's really important for us to talk about. So I guess, Spencer, what's your first reaction to hearing all this?
Well, is it really anybody's surprise that this didn't take off?
Oh, what a beautiful image.
It's like it's just that's not surprising to me. I mean, I thought it was kind of dumb in the beginning. Like I sort of like get it. And I actually don't blame a company that can essentially print money like Meta can. Like,
sure.
like Google AdWords and AdSense, like it just kind of prints money for everybody else to do things. And I actually kind of like that. If a company's got a great business model, yeah, go ahead, take some of that capital.
And innovate.
Yeah, go innovate in something. And so I actually kind of respected them for trying to change the way that humans interface with machines. I think they highly underestimated how effective just like a mouse is, and are just a monitor.
I think it's COVID. I say this from a personal standpoint. So let's unpack this. I have some thoughts of why they made these choices. I mean, and we can talk about the layoffs and impact, but like, why do you think they made the metaverse in the first place? Why did they change their name? Why did they go all in on the metaverse?
They even rebranded the whole company.
They rebranded the whole company based around what they're shutting down right now. So my question to you, Spencer, is like, why do you think they made this change? I have some thoughts, but why go from Facebook and go all in on VR?
Well, I think they wanted to rebrand themselves as a tech company, not a social media company.
Sure.
And I don't think they necessarily had a great way of doing that.
So this is an opportunity. So maybe Meta sounds better than Facebook.
That's true. Like it's a little bit, it's like Alphabet. It's a little bit more generic in the sense that it can be an umbrella. Most of their investments up until that point, the biggest ones had been social media oriented, right? Like WhatsApp, Instagram, those type of things. And I do think that they wanted to be the next Microsoft. I can imagine that was spoken in the board meetings. And Microsoft is just built around Microsoft is built around productivity. um, and and Facebook and Meta were never really built around productivity. They were
They're
about
built around
they were
social
about
interactions.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they were built around capitalizing unproductivity.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. I guess so. They commit to the metaverse. And I think obviously my answer to this is they saw an opportunity with COVID. That I think they
Mhm.
saw COVID happening, Zoom happening, and I know this full well. My own company, we take off during COVID because there's this behavior change, and it's very anecdotal, right? Like all of a sudden there's behavior change, and you start being predictive based off of that behavior change, which is
Yeah.
this is how we're going to start interacting now as businesses. Zoom, we're going to start interacting, digitally, work from home, all these things. These were these assumptions that this is the new future,
Okay.
right? And people think about people in general. I know a lot of people that went and moved to small towns said I can live anywhere, right?
Mhm.
That was the mentality, and I think with all that behavior change and mentality change, they said, okay, what is the next layer to this? Right now, this is so like you and I are talking right now, and this is not very personal, right?
Yeah. It lacks something.
it lacks something. And so I think the argument that they were trying to make was that, well, what if we get everyone in the same room? And you see that with Apple, they were doing this thing where you could imagine they're like a physical person standing next to you, right?
Okay, that's actually a good point, right? Is that the 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 pandemic and just the strength of that response, right? Where and I mean, you weren't allowed to go see like anybody, like some areas were obviously more shut down than others, but um, it's almost like immediately the forms of interaction that we had to replace in-person interaction, their flaws were super apparent.
Super parent.
And so you're right that they maybe said, okay, well, if this is going to be a large piece of the future, how can we start to smooth out these rough edges? How can we try to capture what was in person with the convenience of this online communication?
The problem with that assumption, and I use Speech Cloud as an example. My software company was a company that would help classrooms basically take that experience online, so you could have kind of that duality.
Mhm.
Does really well during COVID. The moment COVID starts ending, people start dropping us like 70% churn of customers in 6 months,
Wow.
and the reason why, you can try to facilitate, you can try to recreate that human experience, right? And go through all this work and all this technology. You know what we still want? The legitimate real human experience, right? So it's like you'll never recreate that. And if we can go back to that, we're going to choose that over this, right? That like
Absolutely.
people chose brick and mortar classrooms over using my tech, right? They chose let's go back to in person and using the metaverse and everyone slapping on headsets and being lonely, right? Like there's this huge, and so I think the biggest mistake they made, the same mistake I made, they just made it at a much larger scale, is
Yeah.
human behavior. Don't just chase the seasonality of what's going on in the
Yeah.
market. Where's the human behavior, right? If I had asked
Mhm.
professors what they wanted is to go back to just teaching on a whiteboard. That's what they wanted. If you ask people, I think you asked employers, if you asked people legitimately, they wanted to just, work remote and just do their work. But when they're actually interacting with humans, they want to be interacting in person with other humans. And so
Mhm.
I think the hybrid is more of the answer, where it's like, hey, maybe do your work at home. That's like, you got to sit there, you got to pound, you got to do granular, but then go into the office, you can have the human interaction. You can go like,
Yeah.
I think so. My point in all of this saying is that is what they've learned is it,
Hmm.
you follow the human behavior, not the seasonality of the market. I think
Yeah.
that's the critical piece here.
Though I to I guess uh, be charitable to them. Uh, a lot of the psychology at play with work from home wasn't apparent.
No,
I don't think that like we
hindsight is 2020,
there's
buddy.
always been data that humans need humans. Okay, but the world had been becoming increasingly digital, um, and the devastating psychological impacts from someone only interacting with others in an online format wasn't quite clear yet. We knew something was wrong, say, with young men and their mental health was not doing great. And there have been people who have been posing, oh, well, they're spending more time with video games. I think that made video games kind of the scapegoat as opposed to the reality is that they're just not interacting with humans in a human environment. And if you're in the business world, you spend most of your time interacting with people in the office. At least that was the world that they were in 2019.
Yeah.
And then so I think they highly underestimated what it does to people to be physically isolated, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm talking to you, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same. We've talked about this so many times, but just when we get in person, yeah, I don't know how you best describe it. I think everyone knows it, right? There's the humanity. I
Yeah,
feel like,
there's something authentic about it. I mean, just even the capacity for human touch, like
yeah,
I mean, I can't dab you up, can't give you a hug, can't give it a fist pound, can't do any of that, and it just it cheapens the experience. What's interesting with that, I would say, is that I have found digital interaction to be a great boon to my social life as my life has matured and become more busy. So I can't find. I mean, for example, you're in Arizona, right? Like I live in Utah. Like we can't connect physically, right?
right.
And I've got friends that are scattered, mainly in Utah, but across the United States. I get together with them once a week and we play video games. Um, that's more compatible. If there's a diaper blowout or something, I can go help with that. I couldn't even if I had friends local, I don't think I'd be able to leave my family and that human interaction that I've built my life around being in person with my family. I don't think I could remove myself once a week for that. That'd be hard. And so the digital interaction of video games, the social aspect, has been very beneficial to me.
I think,
But
but you're
it's
not
in
lacking
moderation.
human interaction. I think the
That's true.
key here, and I would say you are lacking, depending, but you are lacking some human interaction. I think from a friend standpoint, but you have your wife, you have your kids. I mean, you go to church, there's activities like
It's
there
true.
is
And I got
there's
coworkers too when I go
you
into
got
the office, right? Yeah.
you got coworkers, and so I think that there's layers to this where I just think about those young men who work online, as a developer, they're on their own. They have no
Yeah.
family. They see like
Just in a
I
basement
cannot
somewhere. It's like,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah, dude, I just can't imagine. I feel for those guys because sometimes there's not an escape because it's like I don't have the money to go out, but I need to
Yeah.
work. But gaming's cheap. You know what I mean? It's like I can
Hmm.
see the layers and how people get to this point. And so to kind of I guess bring this back, which is this is human behavior. This is not where we want to live. I think there's a subset. There's people that enjoy VR. They can go enter it, and I think it's purely because maybe it's they don't have what I just said, and maybe the VR brings is a little bit closer than just playing video games on Discord. So there's layers. There is layers, but I think majority of humans are going to choose. Dude, I want to go be in person, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that's the reason for the failure. Yeah,
Kind of blows up the Ready Player One world. Thinking about Ready Player One, right? You see this sort of dystopian world where everyone chooses to be in a VR world instead, right? And
right.
and in the opening scene, he's kind of looking at the people living in the slums, and they're pretending to surf. Uh, you know, and you see a side by side. So you see like the reality, and then you see what's happening in I forget
In the
what his
game,
world's, the game, right? And he's
uh, Oasis,
the Oasis, yeah. So like the guy is surfing, okay, in the game, but he's just standing like he's surfing, and then you see some lady who's like a middle-aged overweight woman pretending to be a pole dancer, right? And you
yeah.
see like her sexy version, right?
Woo.
um and uh they even make a point later in the movie, right, that he gets a suit that lets him feel. It's like haptic feedback, full haptic feedback, right?
Yeah,
And the bottom line is that the human brain is, you can trick it, but it's got a lot. It is hard coded to understand reality and predict it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has all sorts of senses, and that's why like the uncanny valley exists. Like you can sense when something's wrong. Your brain does an enormous amount of processing, identifying what's real.
That we don't necessarily know that it is doing that processing, but like
They don't,
it's
but
sending these
you get
cues.
that feel, right?
It's oh yeah. I don't know about you, but I remember when I was in El Salvador and I'm walking down a side street and it's dark. I mean, this is back in 2015 when hell's breaking loose and people are getting murdered, right? Big highest homicide rate in the world. And I just remember you get like, dude, you just, especially when you're there, you get a feeling. You just, you didn't question. You weren't a deer in headlights. You go.
Yeah.
And I've never understood where that comes from, but it's just like we all just call it the intuition or the feeling, or and the
Well,
same thing applies here, right? I think it's the
yeah. I
same
mean,
thing.
there's an interesting book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink,
Hmm.
and it's about your brain's ability to what he calls thin slice, which is essentially, especially with AI, this is sort of relevant. I think is AIs are these large language neural networks, and they can have hidden layers. So you have this input, and then you got a bunch of basically a black box, like you just don't know what's going on in there, and then out comes an output, and you can't really say like how it got there. You don't know; it's a black box. Um, there are some models that have peeled back those layers and made unhidden layers, but they're hard to follow, right? You can't
Yeah.
really do the big giant LLMs, right? Um, our brain is like the world's most complex. I mean, trillions and trillions of connections. Um, it is a black box, and so our brain does the same thing that a artificial neural network does. It will intake information, it'll run it through its neural network, and it will spit out an output. That output, at least as Malcolm Gladwell argues, and I tend to agree with him, is your intuition. So that feeling that you get, it's using all of these cues, and so the VR world, it lacks the authenticity. And when you pass
Yeah.
it through your brain's neural network, there are many, many missing pieces that make it feel rewarding. Like that interaction, it's your brain is going to give you this, hey, I thin sliced this, you gave me an input, I gave you an output, and I said this output's not great, right? And if your brain's not happy with it, it's not going to be producing the neurochemicals you need to feel good. And
Hey, so you're gonna
so,
feel crappy. You don't know why logically, right? You're
mhm,
just like, I just interacted. I just, was with friends, but you're missing something. You're missing
100%. And how many people have you talked to that say, I was in Zoom meetings all day and it's so draining?
where actually when I was in meetings, I love people, right? And when I was in person, now pointless meetings drove me bonkers, but I
Yeah.
love working with people. And when you're working with people and you're actually progressing, let's make sure there's clarity
Yeah.
here. The reason why so many people hate Zoom meetings or hate meetings because they feel a lack of progression. Like,
Right.
but if you're in a meeting that feels like there's progression, they
An
feel
in
great.
person one, or like
An
a,
in-person one. I'm just saying,
yeah.
and again, it's going to be tiered. If I'm in a meeting that's on Discord, that's just voice, and it's progressive, like again, you're going to get some good feelings, and it's the same thing. Like video games, all
Hmm.
these things. Like I always say, video games bring me those feelings, that competitive feeling, but oftentimes they don't bring me that competitive euphoria that I
Yeah.
get when I was playing,
Like a sport.
soccer and club and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like because it's physical, it's the mental, it's the competitive, it's and so I think the key here is the tiers, and then I guess I want to make sure we only have a few minutes. I want to make sure we talk about just like what does this mean though with all these layoffs? Because
Yeah. So interesting about that. So I think it means two things here is that, first of all, kind of like what we talked about, is that the metaverse will and VR is never going to replace um, human interaction. And I would say, especially in the productivity world, when people interact for productivity and work, they're interacting mainly because they have to interact, not because out of desire.
yeah,
And so, in that case, a Zoom meeting is fine. Okay. I
it's
think
easier.
where VR can still have a place to grow is where people go for unique experiences.
Sure.
And so, and also to kind of frame this, I know we hate layoffs. Of course, nobody likes losing their job, but it's a necessary part of the business cycle. Um, and Palmer Luckey, he was the creator of Oculus, right? He sold it to Meta. So he had an opinion on this. He said he says, I have an opinion on the Meta layoffs that is contrary with most of the VR industry and much of the media, but still strongly held. This is not a disaster. They still employ the largest team working on VR by about an order of magnitude. Nobody else is even close. The Meta is abandoning VR narrative is obviously false. 10% layoffs is basically 6 months of normal churn concentrated into 60 days, strictly number wise. The majority of the 1,500 jobs cut off in Reality Labs, which was out of 1,500, were roles working on first party content, internally developed games that competed directly with third party developers. So I think this is interesting because he goes on to actually lay out who was laid off and why.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, they're working on um,
First party games.
first party games, and Meta was willing and able to fund them at a massive loss, with no hope of that their game turning a profit.
It almost is the reverse model of Microsoft. It's like Microsoft's trying to, well, I don't know about that, but like, it just feels like they don't want to make the games anymore. They just want to create the platform, right? Use the VR in the hardware, right? We're the hardware. The only reason why I say that is because this is branded Xbox and it's Meta, right?
Yeah,
Like Xbox, like we're just going to make the games. Other people make the hardware. We're going to partner with everybody,
yeah,
and it feels like
and
this time it's like people just make the games for VR. We're just gonna.
and I think that's probably Palmer's making that case, and I think I agree with him. He says that if if the people making third party games had to compete against the polish of a team with infinite money and no demand on ROI, you're
It's
not going
hard
to
to
get
compete.
you're not going to get any development teams entering the space, which will lead to just slow growth in that area.
And I remember when I was at Gamescom in Germany, I met with these guys. There was this big section that was like Facebook, or excuse me, Meta sponsored companies making games and stuff like that. And that was such a big thing. It's like, can you get sponsored by Meta? So I'd be curious. There's sponsored. There's first party. There's third party. Is there like third party sponsored? I'd be,
Yeah,
so there's.
so like I mean he said a lot of people say they just should have funded these developers instead of acquiring them.
Hmm.
Yeah, just like oh, we'll give you some money to fund something. And he says yes, absolutely they should have done that. Hindsight, however, is 2020. I don't think that they anticipated only selling 700 copies of Rock Band VR after spending 8 figures on it. So um he's
I didn't
like,
even hear about it. But you're not
yeah,
you're not going to sell that many. Again, I think like VR, I like the way you phrase it. It's a unique experience. The problem with VR, I think it goes back to the 90% of VR headset owners use it once to once or less a month. So that means they use it less than 12 times a year.
mm-hmm,
The
yeah,
90% of VR headset owners. That's not like
that's
like
crazy.
the majority of people are not using it. It goes back to like, how do you know if you have a good product that's going to grow is
Do people
utilization.
use it? Yeah.
So utilization is super low in VR, and oftentimes the games that people play, there's only a handful. I actually bought Half-Life Alyx, just downloaded it, gonna play it, but it's like there's just not
Well,
things pushing us to
why did you
play.
get it? Why'd you get a VR headset?
I got it for a video that I'm
Okay.
working on. That's the
Ha-
reason.
Do you feel tempted to use it, or
Rarely.
when you do want to use it, what do you use it for?
I
Like, why do
only
you
time
use
I
it?
ever use it is I'm bringing it out because family. You want to show them something. It's kind of fun. Again, unique experience that I've had that I then share with others that they have. It's like a party thing. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
fun.
that's
And
true.
then
That's almost every instance that I've used VR myself was either experimental, where I just borrowed it because I was curious. I wanted to try some stuff out, like try Microsoft Flights. I think it's really useful for Sims. Uh,
sure,
I like Sims. or it was in a social setting where we were hanging out and somebody's like, "Hey, you want to play Beat Saber or do you want to play
They're
Super
like,
Hot?"
yeah,
And we'll just watch you play Super Hot. You
yeah.
know, like
It's been that way. And so I think the key here, though, with the few minutes we have left, I think what's hard is I met with Amir. His name's Amir Satvat, and he's like runs the biggest community for gamers that are laid off. And so he and I actually met a few weeks ago, and there's a video I'm working on for that.
what's that
But
community called? Or does he have like an X account or something?
yeah, I mean, his LinkedIn, he's got 150,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I mean, he's let me just pull it up.
What's his name again?
Amir. His name is
Amir.
Amir Satvat, and so he's founder of ASGC. So
ASGB
ASGC.
GC.
Anyway, so Amir, his whole shtick is like, yeah, he helps people basically find jobs, and again, one of the most prominent individuals. We talked, and again, 50,000 plus game developers, people in the gaming industry have been laid off. This is now, and that's only in the past few years, right? The past 3 or 4 years. On the average, he said it was 1,400 to 2,000 at most per year was or what used to be the pre 2022.
1,400 to 2,000, and what are we at now?
It's now 10 to 14,000 per year.
Is that just rebalancing from the COVID's like
big bubble, big hire, and so I think there's just a lot of readjustment here, and so I guess the sad reality is I just don't. A lot of those people that have experience in VR, the question is, where do they go? Like, you just built up all this experience.
That's true.
VR is not growing. And maybe it is a little, but not growing for the amount of people that now have the education. And I think that same thing applies to gaming. And when Amir and I spoke, it was he doesn't just help people get jobs in the gaming community. He helps people that were in the gaming community get jobs now elsewhere because there's just not opportunity.
Pivot those skills
somewhere else. And so I think that's what makes me sad is you have a lot of talent that is going elsewhere, and that's basically being removed from the gaming community. So that's always
sad.
I don't know. So any last thoughts?
Well, no, I just think that if you're one of the listeners happen to be affected by the layoffs, somebody, point him to that community. Did Amir talk about any of his resources available?
Yeah, and so I mean, very few people watch this. So those that do, I actually have a big video coming out on the layoffs and putting together tons of stuff for those that have been laid off, and even those that want to start a video game studio from that. So Amir's been helping me. I have hundreds of resources. We've met. I've done a bunch of research into what's going on. So hopefully, so anybody that hears that now, that video is gonna be coming in the next maybe month or so. So there you go. But yeah, so I'll have those resources in that video, and hopefully it'll help some people out.
You could give us a shout out in that video.
Yeah. Go check out the podcast.
We needed 2 guys.
We got to actually be consistent with it. This is our year. We're going to be consistent from right now.
That's right. I'm going to graduate this year, I swear.
Oh my gosh. Maybe I'll actually,
I'll make some money somewhere.
I'll make some money somewhere. It's not the making money, it's keeping it and growing it. I think that's been my problem.
That's true.
It's not been the making money. It's making money and then actually stop reinvesting it and then burning it, I think is the...
Yeah. See, I'm just going to convince people that I'm worth more than, $30K.
Oof. I like that.
Right.
That's a good aim, but...
Yeah. So,
all right, guys. Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
thanks for having us. Thanks for listening to us.
Seriously.
That sounds weird. Thanks for having us. Yeah, but all right, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.